What on earth can us business owners learn from Jono Coghill, a member of Powderfinger, one of Australia's biggest ever rock bands? The answer? Plenty. It's a very rock and roll episode 612 of the 13-year-old award-winning Small Business Big Marketing podcast.
Well, I said, welcome to a small business marketing show where successful small business owners share their souls to take your marketing straight to the lead. Now, here's your host, Mr. Timbo Reid.
And welcome back to your weekly dose of rockstar marketing. I'm your host, Timbo Reid, not a rock star. And I have an insatiable curiosity for uncovering marketing ideas that help businesses just like yours to grow. I do that through having weekly in-depth conversations with successful business founders and rock stars. You, infinitely more importantly, are a motivated business owner, ready to crank out some great marketing to build that beautiful, beautiful business of yours into the empire it absolutely deserves to be. As per usual, team, there really is marketing GOLD dripping from the ceiling over here at Small Business Big Marketing's HQ. So let's get stuck right in. Before we go and meet Powderfinger's Jono Coghill, please write down this website address, outsourcingwebinar.com.au. Write it down or go there now and then come back to this episode. Why? Because on Thursday, November 10, I'm running a free webinar all around how to effectively outsource. I see too many tired business owners. I see too many frustrated business owners because they're busy and they're just not getting enough time to work on their business. And one of the solutions to that is effective outsourcing. We'll cover what it is, what it isn't, the limiting beliefs that you may have around it, how it can benefit your business and your well-being, traps to avoid, what you should outsource, how to do it effectively, what it should cost, and so much more. And I'm going to be joined by Jeff Collinson, a fellow on the ground in the Philippines who runs an outsourcing business. And you'll hear from longtime listener and past guest Scott Hunt, who has been using outsourcing very effectively in his fitness business in Australia, plus answering all the questions that you may have around outsourcing. So go ahead and register for free, outsourcingwebinar.com.au. Alrighty, Jono Coghill. Well, he was the drummer for Powderfinger, one of Australia's biggest rock bands of the 90s and noughties. Their achievements include 18 ARIA awards, the third highest behind Silverchair and John Farnham, including Best Group, Album of the Year, and Highest Selling Album. They have sold millions and millions of albums and accumulated well over 1.5 billion downloads on Spotify alone. Their anthems, like These Days and My Happiness, were ranked number 1 on the Triple J Hottest 100, and 21 other Powderfinger tracks have ranked on this list in other years. They've toured with ColdPlay. These guys are no slouches, as you probably know if you're Australian. If you're not, this is important information. They've toured with ColdPlay, Crowded House, Silverchair, and have had their music feature in Hollywood blockbusters, including Mission Impossible 2, and that great Aussie film called Two Hands with the late Heath Ledger and the wonderful Brian Brown. Now, at this point, I can hear you yelling down your speaker, "Hey, Timbo, what's all this got to do with small business marketing?" My answer, everything. This is a deep dive with one of Australia's rock and roll royalty about the business of music. After all, Powderfinger went from an idea to a small business to a very fucking big one. So sit back as we cover branding, the creative process, income streams, band dynamics, dealing with both fame and failure, the importance of mentors, the annoyance of yes men, and so much more. And oh, by the way, you might have picked up there's a language warning on this episode, so lock up the kids if you need to. Righto, enough from me. Let's go and meet Powderfinger's Cogsy. Cogsy, welcome to the Small Business Big Marketing podcast. Most unusual to have a drummer of a great Australian rock band on a business podcast, but we'll go with it.
Yeah. So great. Thanks for having me, Tim.
Describe what it's like or what it was like at the height of Powderfinger's success.
At the height of Powderfinger's success. Gee, that's interesting, isn't it? Now, this will probably come into the story, but I prided myself on not getting too sentimental about things during the band. Like I was always looking for the next step. What's next sort of thing. But I think there were moments that I could look back on and say, that's like that felt like the height of our success. And it probably wasn't what people think, where you're headlining to the biggest crowds. I think it was things like Crowded House in the late 90s, who were a huge band in New Zealand and Australia and around the world at that stage, decided to call it quits, and they asked us to support them on their very final gig. We were one of maybe 6 support bands, but they played at the Opera House, so we got a chance to play at the Opera House, in front of the Opera House, to 100,000 people. And honestly, that felt like the height of our success. But we had a long way to go from there. But it was this, I think looking back, that was the moment it was all starting to click.
What an irony. You're
getting along.
Your highest moment is supporting another great Australian band.
Well, it was just an amazing gig.
Yeah,
it was an epic gig.
Mate, it was incredible.
Yeah.
It was one of my great regrets not going to it. I watched it. It was, in fact, it was broadcast live on the Nine Network from memory and all around the world. And wasn't it the first night was cancelled because of rain or something?
No, so there was only one night. So this is their first
farewell.
Time they farewell.
Yeah.
I think they did too. Like, they might have done one 10 years later.
Yeah.
But this was the first time. I don't think it was broadcast live.
Really?
I think. Well,
maybe I just bought it on DVD, but I've watched it many times.
But it was an epic, fun gig.
So, okay. What about Powderfinger specific? Beyond that is Powderfinger specific, I suppose. But was there a moment in time? It doesn't have to be a big moment either. It doesn't have to be the biggest stadium or anything, but where you've sat back behind the kit and gone, okay, this is pretty good. Or maybe not even on stage.
There were moments on stage where I had to force myself to sit back and enjoy it, especially the very last gig that we played in Brisbane in 2010, just to say, now, you need to remember this, because often when you're in a gig, you're in the moment, and you forget to look out. And, there's some, that was pretty amazing. We won a few ARIA awards, which is an Australian thing. We were a big Australian band. We toured the world when we had a bit of a hit for a while in America with a song called My Happiness, and we got on the back of that. ColdPlay asked us to tour with them, so that was pretty special. That was pretty amazing.
You did
to see that? Yeah, that was good.
That's
that was
good.
Like a 15-date tour. Things like that. Like, obviously, mostly in Australia, we were playing really big crowds then, and that was.
When a band like ColdPlay approaches you, one of the biggest bands in the world, obviously it comes through your manager.
I can tell you this.
Yeah, go on.
So we were playing the Big Day Out Festival, which is a big festival. It was a big festival in Australia, one of the biggest alternative festivals in the world at
Great
the time.
Have you listened to that podcast?
No, I haven't.
Oh,
but that's
fantastic.
pretty epic, I've heard. Yeah. And ColdPlay were on the tour with us. We were all like one of the headliners, and we invited them for a game of cricket, and thinking they're English and we're going to smash them. The exact opposite happened. They were really good cricket players and they smashed us.
Yeah.
And I think we just started having beers after that. And I think we were in Melbourne, and Chris, the singer, went up to his room and came back down and went, "I just listened to your album. It's amazing. Do you guys want to come on tour with us?" So it was one of those funny moments, It didn't
just like
go through
that.
Management. Yeah.
So what's the process then? You just go, or do you have to go through bloody record companies and managers and all the bullshit, or is it just like, no, we're coming?
I think you have to go through certain processes, but at the time, I can't remember what happened, but it was pretty much like that. It was he just said, "I'd love you guys to come on tour with us in America." And we said, "Let's organise it. Let's get our managers to chat." So, I think usually you probably find that most support acts would get on tours like that with friends and some band that likes them. That's how it usually works.
Do you find hanging out, like you've already mentioned, so Neil Finn, high achiever in the music world.
Never met him.
Chris, never met him?
No, I haven't, but the other guys have.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But, okay, Chris Martin, high achiever.
Yep.
All these blokes are high achievers, as were you blokes in Powderfinger. Did you find that, there's that old saying that you're the sum total of the 5 people you hang around. So when you were hanging around people like a Chris Martin or a Neil Finn, which you didn't, but other people like that, did you find that it elevated your your thinking, your performance, your love of your job, or not?
Wow.
It's just rock and roll.
No, it's an interesting question because I always often think to people, you know, you love music, you love certain bands, and then I'll say to them, have you ever met that band and it changed what you thought of their music? Because not often, but sometimes you'll meet a band and they'll be complete dickheads. And so you just go, oh, geez, it's funny, I don't like their music as much anymore.
Yeah, right.
And the opposite sort of happens if they are good people. You start to go, oh, you know, let's have a listen. Because when we were doing a lot of touring and in those times, we're listening to a lot of bands, a lot of music. So, and a lot of influences.
Because you wanted to listen to music, or because it was actually like research? I hate to dumb it down to a business sort of sense.
A bit of research, but
Yeah.
just inundated with, you know, you're on festivals with
Yes.
50 bands and that sort of stuff. So a lot of different influences. But I would generally say a good personality will influence you to sort of look into what their music is doing and maybe say, oh, yeah, I might listen to this a bit more and now I understand it a bit more. You know,
It's just fascinating. I read a lot of rock star autobiographies. It's sort of my genre of reading, and blokes like Anthony Kiedis from the Chili Peppers,
Right.
Chris Martin from from ColdPlay, Springsteen, Phil Collins. Their work ethic, beyond being just creative individuals who love to entertain or are out there on stage doing their thing, their work ethic behind the scenes. Just listened recently to an interview with Anthony Kiedis on the Joe Rogan podcast, and they rehearse a lot for many hours every day when they're not on stage. And it's just what you do. You know, as business owners, I don't think we do that enough. You know, in our own business, I don't mean rehearse, but actually go over stuff. And we're more reactive than we are proactive. Were you a sort of proactive type of musician, or were you just on stage, you did your job and went home?
no, see, that saying, find your passion and you'll never work a day in your life. That's music. If you can find a job or a small business that you're passionate about, you'll just love it, right?
Yes.
And I suppose that, to me, that's probably the key to looking for something. If you can afford to do that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Music is, all these great musicians are, I would probably say, completely obsessed with what they do.
Completely.
So practice is not practice. It's life. It's the blood running through their veins. And we were the same, to a fault, really. As far as your relationships come second, you forget about your life and your friends. And then when you lose them, you start to realise what's the most important thing. But, you know, there was 10 years of Powderfinger where there was a lot of just obsession. We would rehearse 4 days a week. And music, we were just all about writing as good as songs as possible, and whatever that took to get to that point. And I mean, it ended in the band sort of breaking apart in our because we were so into what we were doing. And the other thing with music, it's really personal. It really, you look at, say, Bruce Springsteen, it's a real expression of what he's doing.
Yeah.
So he is obsessed with making this beautiful product, but he's also, it's him.
It's him.
That's coming out.
It's not uncommon to hear a musician not laugh at a journalist, but to say, like, you're asking me all these questions about myself. Man, all you need to do is read the lyrics of my songs. And
it's true, isn't it?
I've laid it bare.
Yeah.
You know?
That's very true, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you can see why a lot of musicians get really uncomfortable in an interview, because that is the way they express themselves.
They've laid themselves bare.
I'm listening to Smashing Pumpkins at the moment, the album Siamese Dream. I don't know if you got into that, but they're shy. This is in 1993. These 4 people who are fairly shy, except for the singer,
Well, he was
who
troubled.
can speak.
He's passed away.
Billy
hasn't he?
Corgan. No, it's all, they're all still going.
Billy, sorry, you're alive.
And they're just really lovely people. And I just think the music business must have messed with their heads, because there's this pressure to sell who you are in a way. Anthony Kiedis is great at it, of course.
Mate, he's a machine at it.
Yeah.
He's growing up, and his old man was a Hollywood actor. He grew up in Hollywood. He went to Hollywood High. Mate, that's his thing. So he kind of gets it. It's not new to him.
It's nearly why we listen to the Chili Peppers too, isn't it? Because, I mean, the Chili Peppers have some good music, and I was a huge fan, but some of it's like, I mean, I love their couple of their albums. I thought they were epic.
Yeah,
Blood Sugar Sex Magic and Mother's Milk.
Amazing.
Thought they were awesome. But I think sometimes they wander into a bit of sort of like a lullaby pop.
Yeah.
But because it's Kiedis, you're just like, wow.
Yeah.
This
But
is
it's
cool.
also the energy. I mean, again, I'm not going to draw analogies back to. I'll let the listeners draw their analogies back into their business, but I do want to have to say that the passion that they show for what they do is just so addictive, and it just rubs off. And if you can do that in business, I mean, if you're in a business that you don't love, it's going to rub off onto your customers as it is. It's going to rub off onto your fans or your audience or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
I couple of quotes. Now, this is very unfair because Powderfinger disbanded in 2010.
No,
But these are quotes.
totally up for it.
Just I want to get to know you a bit more and help listeners understand you a bit more before we get into the business of Powderfinger and the business of music. But Bernard, who was the lead singer of Powderfinger, once described you as a psycho who likes to antagonise people in a good way. And you've been known to describe yourself as a superhero.
Oh, really?
Okay, so we forget that one. I'll just scrub that out.
No, that's good. So,
Tell me about the psycho bit in a good
the
way.
psycho bit was the obsession, in the band room, I sort of knew how to run a band room, and that didn't always rub off well with the people in the band room. It was a little bit authoritarian sometimes, and I look back on myself and I've apologised to the guys a few times about that and said I'm sorry that what I was like for those years of. Like, I suppose when I heard an idea in a band room and there was something coming out, I could see what it could become. So I would push for that to happen, sort of thing.
Well, someone's got to drive the boat.
Yeah. But like as a 26-year-old,
You didn't have the
trying to
skills to do
drive-
it in a way that managed people to their strengths, and
there you go.
you just came in over the top.
That's it.
It's surprising to hear that. I would have thought Bernard Fanning would have been that person.
It was him and I.
Do you
The
ever,
two pricks.
do you ever punch on?
Oh, every now and then. There were a few moments.
Yeah, no doubt.
Bernard learnt quicker than me how to be diplomatic.
Right.
And so I stayed psycho for longer.
Well, you're a drummer, mate. You've got all this energy to expel, and you had to get it out somehow. If you weren't behind the kit,
Yeah, probably, yeah.
But I suppose also, was there something about being at the back of a band where you could see, if you're at the front of the band, you don't know what everyone else is doing, but Bernard clearly had a sixth sense, but you're sitting at the back most times as a drummer.
Yeah, it's like
Are you watching people going, hey, Darren, why'd you do that, mate? Ian, why didn't you move over there? Or is it just...
Yeah, it's sort of right. Where I was sitting and because I felt proficient enough that I didn't have to concentrate too hard, it was like I was sitting there absorbing everything, and it was like I had a mix of the band, of what the sound, what the guitar and the bass and the drums, how they sounded together, and then I could sort of analyse it from that point of view. So yeah, I think being a drummer, that helps.
I see that in business all the time because someone wants to take control, and often it's the business owner because it's their baby, their idea, they're trying to get it to market and make it successful. But, someone has to take control and lead the way and set the strategy. You had a manager.
Yeah. That was business though.
Yes.
Yeah, that wasn't in the band room. It's funny that there's a really great documentary about the Rolling Stones writing the song "Sympathy for the Devil."
Oh yeah,
and which is sort of, I think I've grown to love that. I think it's on YouTube or it's something. They're in. I can't remember where they are. It's Paris or Birmingham.
They were in some. They took off from England because they had a tax bill and they went to France. Yeah, somewhere in there.
Okay, so they're in a warehouse in France or something.
I think it was a castle.
Oh well.
Oh no, that was Exile on Main Street.
Yeah, that was Exile on Main Street. And they write this song, and I think they played the one song, for a week at least, maybe longer, 5 to 10 days. And you see the evolution of the song.
Over and
it's
over
pretty
and
epic
over.
because it's nothing like what it started out to be.
Yeah.
But Sympathy for the Devil is one of the greatest rock and roll songs, right?
Pretty cool.
And the beauty of the Rolling Stones, for what I can see now, is that they got along really well.
Yeah.
And they were really patient. And they sort of as much as they might have pissed each other off over the years, they just loved being together.
Yep.
And they could really appreciate each other's talents, which gives them this patience.
Yep.
Writing a song for 7 or 8 days, imagine that. Most of us would go crazy.
And
They
playing
loved
it however many times a day.
Yeah. So they loved that. And when they came out of at the end with this fucking phenomenon.
They did.
You know?
Yeah.
So it goes to show what you can get with patience and a bit of caring for people.
And
no one in charge, really.
Do you know that?
I don't know. You've watched this video and you're thinking,
Oh, okay. On that,
Jesus.
well, I have to watch that because I don't know. I mean, I look at the Stones. I wonder who would be in charge. The obvious thing to say is Jagger, but Richards would have this really subtle way, I reckon, of just directing the traffic because
Yeah.
he's like King Keith. But
then they've got no costs on their side. They're worth millions of dollars in this thing. So they're not like, we got to hurry and get this out.
what about, that Bittersweet Symphony by the Verve? I mean, that was a complete rip-off of a really early Stones song. And for the first, it was only about 3 or 4 years ago that the Stones actually finally gave it back to them. Because they sued them and then...
Yeah, well, it was complicated because... Do you want me to go into it?
Why not?
So...
business owners
Yeah, sorry.
No, I love it, mate.
So someone did a symphonic version of a Stones song. The Stones had the rights to that version, and the Verve used some of that as a sample in one of their songs.
They sure did.
But it wasn't a song we'd go, oh, that's a Stones song.
It was a bit harsh, though, man. At the end of the day, man, I know business is business, and people are precious about their ideas. But yeah, geez, boy, Stones not short of a quid. Although maybe at that time they had a bloody big tax bill, and they had to sort of work through that.
It was at the time when people were sampling a lot of stuff.
Yeah, right.
And no one knew what that meant
Right.
for the business of music.
Cogsy, was the obsession, just going back to Powderfinger, was the obsession shared equally amongst the band? You say you and Bernard were the two sort of control freaks and the ones who were really push, but was the obsession equally shared? Because I've met Darren a few times. I shared an office with him in Melbourne at one point, and he seemed a little bit more meek and mild than, what maybe you blokes were.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's going to happen in any business, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. I think the obsession was probably different for everyone, right?
Yeah.
What your vision is of what can become is different sort of thing. And I think Darren's probably one of those people who is a bit more like the Stones, happy to just jam on something all day and see what happens. And he's just a nice guy.
Nice guy. Yeah.
So
loves his music and...
hanging around with some dudes who are full of alpha fucking energy. It's pretty tough.
Yeah.
And I think in a way, there was a lot, he knew how to handle us, really.
Yeah.
So
it's an interesting analogy between the Stones and Powderfinger because Mick took 10 years off to think he could do it all by himself and had that solo career. And I think, what was the big song he had? Emotional Rescue? Or I don't know. But then he came back realising Bernard took some time off and did, what was it? Tea
and Symphony, yeah.
Tea and Symphony.
Yep.
And
he probably realised I don't need Powderfinger
That's
anymore.
right. It was a pretty successful album unfortunately for the finger.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, we might come back to that. Another quote, one of the bit you say, this is one of your quotes. One of the best things about being in the band is that we don't give a fuck about anything else other than having a good time. If people think we're rock stars, then great. Don't analyse things too much. It's not that serious. It's just fucking music. End quote. Now, looking back, was that naive or true? And if it was true, how actually important was the business of Powderfinger? How important was making money and creating a lifestyle?
At the time, and this is when I'm in my mid-20s, trying to kick out the jams type of thing. At the time, you had bands like Pearl Jam and Nirvana and a lot of bands who were reacting against rock and roll and against glam rock. And what they were trying to say was, take us seriously. We're not just these pretty people up on stage performing. We're sort of businessmen and we've got something to say.
Mm-hmm.
We sort of adapted that or adopted that in Australia, and there were a lot of bands who, we would take ourselves really seriously. Mm-hmm. And I think I was saying that at a time when I was saying maybe we shouldn't take ourselves so seriously. Maybe we are just musicians, and the bullshit that's coming, you get to know people behind the scenes and you see what's going on. And there was just some tension between bands and things like that. People
No doubt.
really took it seriously.
Well,
And-
there's a great example of a case study of a musician, a drummer, who decided to get on the business side of music well beyond the music side of music, and that was Lars out of Metallica when that whole Napster thing and the free downloading of music. And he, I don't know what your view on that is. Interesting enough, Anthony Kiedis was asked about that the other week by Rogan, and he's like, "Oh, mate, I don't give a fuck. I just want to play music." Good on Lars for doing it, but he didn't do himself any favours in his personal brand because he's now deemed, I think, as a bit of a dick. After all, it's his fans who are downloading the music, some of which can't afford his music, but they're still listening to it and going to his concerts. I don't know. What was your view on that?
I didn't look down on Lars for doing that. I thought it was, in a way, he probably knew because he would have known about branding and how he would come across to his fans. And I suppose he just thought, you know what, I'm going to make a stand here and do something about it. And I'm sure his life isn't worse because some fans around the world don't like him anymore.
Correct.
I think he's, you start to, I think he's probably come to that conclusion that I'm defined by my 20 best friends, not by people who are pissed off at me about Napster.
Yeah.
So it's, if you're going to take a stand, you're going to lose friends or you're going to lose fans no matter who you are. It's a political stance, isn't it?
And you know what, Cogsy, the reality is, just as we talk about this, one of the biggest bands in the world, I guess, over the course of decades now, would have to be Kiss. And Kiss just overtly like, hey, this is a business, guys. And they'll talk to their fans.
Funny, isn't it?
You listen to an interview with Simmons or Stanley and they're just like, nah, this is a business. Buy the merch, buy the pinball machine,
but Kiss,
go on the tour.
They wouldn't be able to say that if they didn't write good music.
Correct.
You know what I mean?
It's all back to
So they've got to back them up. And the reason they wrote good music because they bloody love music.
They love it. Yeah.
So,
well, it all comes back to no matter what the industry, the best marketing is a great product.
yeah,
You know, if you don't have a great product,
absolutely.
you're stuffed.
Yeah.
You are stuffed.
And people can see through it, can't they? So,
Now, let's get into the business of Powderfinger.
okay, here we go.
Now, Powderfinger, like all bands, are much a brand as you are a band.
Right.
Yeah. So how closely was the brand managed? Like, for example, was it clear when a song, a design, a venue, a music video was on brand? And did you have a criteria that you sort of checked boxes and go, oh, yeah, that's on brand for Powderfinger or that's not? Or was it just an intuitive?
Yeah, it was very intuitive. It was, you think about where we came from. We were sort of, when I joined the band, they just stopped doing covers and they'd been playing bikey joints and strip joints and like B&S balls and shit like that, just tough stuff. And so they came from rock and roll, really.
Yeah.
And I joined the band and they decided we're making originals. And we just started playing to 200 people, to 300 people. It was rock and roll, right? It was a rock and roll gig. It was when alternative music is starting in the early 90s and that influenced us. And it was about playing a gig and connecting with people live. So it wasn't really hard to be intuitive about the brand because music was going in a direction where integrity was everything. There would have been 7 or 8 years where being a rocker on stage and shunning the popularity industry was good branding.
Right.
Right?
So integrity, but just explain that a bit more. When you talk about that, it was sort of Eddie Vedder comes to mind. I don't know why. A man of just like
Eddie Vedder had a huge influence on everyone at that stage.
Okay, so is that what you mean? Like pure integrity? We are all about the music?
We're all about the music. We're not about making money.
Yes.
That was it.
Yes.
And there's this great...
Because we come out of the 80s and that was all about making money.
Absolutely. You know, it was all about white men dressing up in glam gear and shagging lots of women and making lots of money.
Yeah.
And suddenly people started to look at themselves and say, is this who we really want to be? You know, do we want some equality here? Do we want to change things around? And then it just became about the music, you know. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying it changed that quickly, but yeah, it was pretty easy to be in that brand because it felt like you were doing something that you weren't selling out.
You weren't selling out. Well, interesting. I was also listening to an interview recently. I listen to a lot of music interviews.
Yeah.
Rick Rubin, the great producer,
yeah.
producer of the Chili Peppers. I mean, the guy's a freak. And he talked about, and he was really, really adamant about this idea of great bands write for themselves. If you try to write for the fans, it's a dead-end street. You'll have some success early on, but if you keep trying to write for someone else, then you're just not going to succeed long term. Whereas if you retain the integrity, that word you used, and stay true to yourself, your values, the brand values and the band values, then you're going to have longer success.
Yeah, and I suppose you're not going to feel like an imposter, are you?
That's right.
So look at Ed Sheeran, for instance. Ed Sheeran's probably writing for himself. That's probably him, right?
Freak.
He loves pop.
Total freak.
He's not a rock star guy. His lyrics are shallow as the goldfish pond, but that's him. So we don't sit there going, like, I might go, oh God, I hope my girls aren't listening to this too much because it's just so shallow, you know? Like,
come in, Ed.
he probably knows.
Probably knows. He's laughing.
He probably looks at some lyrics and goes, I don't understand this. Can we make it shallower, please? And this is sort of a dig at him, but that's him, right? Like that's his.
Do you look at it? You've come from a rock band of 5 members, 6 if we include this show's
Paul.
Lockie Doley. Oh, and
Who?
Lockie Doley.
Oh, Lockie, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Oh, he'll love to hear that.
Yeah.
Do you look at a bloke like Ed Sheeran, and I love music. I don't understand it at all, Cogsy, how it comes together. But you see videos of Ed in stadiums, huge stadiums. I don't know, sort of 50, 60, 70,000 people. This little redhead bloke standing there with a guitar and a whole lot of pedals and buttons and machines that create all the sounds that you blokes did. But he's just doing it by himself.
But he's written great songs, hasn't he?
Oh, he's great, so absolutely.
He can get away with it.
It wasn't even a criticism. It was just like, I don't understand. I find that amazing. How does he do it?
It is pretty amazing, isn't it?
That's just like...
We should go backstage and see what the team is like behind him. But he is doing it himself. It's freaky, isn't it? It's a freak. It's bizarre. Yeah, really clever.
Incredible. Custard, another great Aussie band.
Yep.
Dave McCormack, their lead singer, says, Powderfinger, and I quote, had this magic formula that appeals to the great Australian audience, end quote. Did the band consciously work on your look and feel, or did it come naturally? So I know that it's a bit of a follow-on question to talking about branding, but, what were the discussions like? I mean, as business owners, we're always presented with, it might be a new logo, a new shop fit out, a new uniform. And we, generally sit down and we really analyse it because we've done our brand work and we've done the brand strategy. Again, is it because it's rock and roll? It's just it's just rock and roll. It'll figure itself out. Or
oh no, it's intuitive. It's very much when you see something you don't like, it doesn't fit, and it's like. And
was it generally a consensus or?
No, never a consensus. It was often not. It was like we probably could have benefited from more of us giving less of a shit so that things would happen, and instead of us all going, like there were discussions like this, I'm not in that film clip enough, I counted how many times, but I'm not in it. And I was like, what the fuck is wrong with you? That part didn't happen, but it should have happened.
Yeah.
But, like there were those conversations which were really funny when we all got egos and stuff like that. But like what Dave's saying, the funny thing is, and I hear this from people these days that talk about Powderfinger like it's this, you appeal to the general public. I mean, I would dare people like Dave McCormack to go and listen to our first 2 albums and say that appeals to the public, because that was just stupid rock and roll, heavy, just completely offensive stuff. And we're in that
as
world,
a Powderfinger
right?
fan. As a Powderfinger fan, I agree.
Yeah. So it's. I mean, I'm not so much offensive, but you know what I mean. It's like we were just a heavy rock band.
Well, you're figuring it out.
Well, we thought we'd figured it out, but we started to learn different things, like how groove works and how melody works and what. And we had this thing in the band room which was all about. It was like this thing called the goosebump test. And if 3 of us got the goosebumps from something, we thought, oh, fuck, we must be on the right direction to do something, right? So, we're very intuitive like that. We were never really trying to be popular. We would just
Really?
write stuff.
Really?
Absolutely. There was never a popularity test. It was all about how you felt when you wrote a song. There's a song called These Days that we wrote, which you would argue is very accessible ballad sort of thing. The way that came about was film director Gregor Jordan came to us with his movie Two Hands.
Two Hands.
And he
Mate,
said,
what a great show that was.
He said, this is the end scene. Can I sit down with you guys and play you the end scene? He played us this end scene.
It's a pretty violent
And
scene for those who
he
haven't
had
seen
some
it.
music over it. And he said, can you write a song to go with that? And so we sat underneath Darren's house in Annerley, which had this really low ceiling, I just remember, and we wrote this song. There was no one ever said, this song's going to sell, whatever, or it's really popular, so it's going to happen. It was all about that scene and what we were trying to do in that scene. Now, the funny thing is, we write this song, it's on the movie, Universal Music gets a new boss, and we decided, well, someone has to go and meet him. So I think Bernie and I and Paul, our manager, were in Sydney, and we said, let's go and see him. He books us for a meeting, and he sits down. The first thing he does, this South African guy, he just breaks people's balls. That was his thing. He thought, here's a big rock band. I'm going to fucking rip into him straight away. And he said, Cogsy, Bernard, that new song of yours on the film, it's shit, and it's not going to fucking do anything. It is shit. And we're like, wow. This is how this guy
It operates.
cuts you. You're the lowest you can ever be. Okay, cool. Luckily a year later it did well. It got
One of your biggest hits.
It was a big hit, and it won Triple J Hottest 100. And I remember seeing him and saying, hey, what do you think of the song now? And he just sort of walked away.
Too proud.
But you know what I mean? Like, even he didn't think it was a good song. We didn't know it was a good song, that sort of thing.
Is there ever a moment when you do write a song and you go, that's a hit? What about My Happiness, or what about Passenger,
Look,
or what
My
about
Happiness was
My Kind of Scene?
My Happiness gave us that feeling in the band room. And it didn't feel like a total Powderfinger song, but it felt good when we played it. And when we played it in the band room, it was big and it was heavy, and we recorded it in a certain way that our producer said, this is the sound, right? And we never said, this is a hit. It just felt good when we did it.
How important is the name of a band? If you could see the look on his face right now, like, was that look like, what kind of a fucking question is that? Or I've got no idea.
Now, this is a big question, isn't it, for small businesses?
It is. Well,
It's a hard one too.
Well, I have a view on it, but I'll like to hear yours first.
No, I'm talking about it because a mate of mine who runs a travel agency out of Noosa called Traveloso.
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 What's that about? Like, as in Traveloso?
Traveloso. It's like a bespoke travel agency.
Okay.
It's
It's too clever a name, but I'll come back to that.
So we sat down, but he's doing really well.
Right.
Like, he's doing great,
Yeah.
We had started the discussion about his business name probably starting a year ago. We went through a few. And my argument was always, mate, your name's really good when people start to know you. They like a name when they can trust you and they like your business. It doesn't matter what it is, as long as it's not eat my shit or something like that. But,
I
it's
agree.
the same with Powderfinger.
I think inherently it is a good name for a rock band, Powderfinger, and obviously
Now
coming
it is.
from, well, even like it comes from, it's got Neil Young heritage, so that's good. That's a good place to start.
Yeah.
It sort of talks about cocaine. I'm not promoting cocaine whatsoever.
But it's not.
But
It's about.
I know it's not, but it is. Like
People take it as
people
that.
take
so
it as
sounds
that.
cool.
Yeah. So it
right.
sounds cool. So you got a couple of head starts in the world of rock and roll. My view on naming is that is like Apple used to be a piece of fruit. Now it's the biggest company in the world. So and it's a dumb name. Right, it was a dumb in the day, and I think Steve Jobs just happened to be in an apple orchard one day, and he's sort of like, I call this computer company Apple. And so it's what you put into the name. I think that much more than spending 6 months and thousands of dollars trying to come up with a name. It's the energy you put behind it. And if people buy into what you're selling or doing, then they're going to love the name.
It must be a hard place be, isn't it?
Yeah.
Worrying about
about
you try
it.
not to, I suppose.
Too many do.
Yeah.
Too many. You can get a name wrong if the spelling's wrong, if it's hard to say, if it's hard to pronounce, all that kind of stuff. But that's why Traveloso kind of threw me a bit because I don't know how to spell it. I don't know what it means. Blah, blah.
But when you sign up to them and you start using, you'll be like, what a great name.
What a great name. Love it. A band is a business. Its members are its owners and employees. So let's talk about band dynamics. We've sort of touched on it already. Deciding on who's the boss, we've sort of covered that. Are you kind of the assumption, again, in a business, it's pretty obvious who the boss is because we have titles of like managing director or general manager or founder or whatever it is. But in a band, you could say maybe the lead singer's the boss. I know in Hunters and Collectors, reading Mark Seymour's autobiography, that was like a union, that band. Everyone had equal votes. There were no bosses. There weren't allowed to be bosses. That was and it caused a lot of pain in Hunters because
that's Powderfinger.
There you go.
Yeah, that's why it wasn't every decision was a democracy, and that's why in the band room I was a psycho because it was more of a psychological thing than a let's vote on this sort of thing. But yeah, every decision was equal. Everyone had equal say on most things, and I think the smartest thing we did, which we probably didn't realise at the start, was we split our royalties equal ways.
No matter who wrote the song.
Yeah.
That's right. Unusual, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's really unusual.
Doesn't the songwriter normally just get the king's share, the lion's share?
Well, I think because the way we started, probably the first few albums was very much we would all write together. We had this thing where we'd be in a band room and we'd start afresh with a song or an idea and it would evolve. Like the Stones writing Sympathy for a Devil sort of thing, for the devil. But yeah, it was really probably really key to our longevity because everyone knew they were in it for equal shares and they were appreciated for what they did. And you hear of bands these days that last like a year or 2 years because the lead singers realised I'm writing the song, so I'm going to take all the money and I'm going to employ people or whatever. It's just probably a crazy way because the end result really is to get that feeling of writing a good song. So how do you do that? It's not about, it shouldn't be about making money. You are creating an emotional, like a cathartic thing for people. You are you're creating something that's mostly intangible, right? So how do you do that? Do you do it by taking all the money? Probably not. So
pretty good for the bloke who writes the least.
Yeah, but
although he or she is probably contributing in another area.
Absolutely, absolutely.
As you look at a band you love, and without one of the members, it's not the same band. So that everyone brings something, whether it be songwriting or performance or just a swagger, whatever it may be.
Or they might be really good at packing the van, and the lead singer just gets drunk after every gig and doesn't do one little bit of lifting. I'm not saying that was us, but you know what I'm saying. There's that stuff. There's a small world you're living in a band, and it's for us. It used to be get in a van, drive to Melbourne, play gigs, drive to Adelaide, play gigs, drive to Sydney, drive to Cairns. We lived in this van, and people did other stuff, lifted weights in other ways.
Yeah, right.
And they should have been appreciated for it, and they were.
Still got the van?
No, they blow up every 6 months.
How did you deal with difficult conversations and major differences? Was there someone there? Was Paul your manager there to do that and say, "Hey, listen, boys, you two you're about to kill each other"?
Absolutely. If it wasn't someone in the band who was good at doing that, we weren't really great at that. Paul was amazing at that, and I look back on the way he was as a manager. He was very much business orientated at the start for the first few years, but just the way he would manage us, how he would help us get along, that sort of stuff, just genius.
Did you personally have someone to help pull your head in when you got a bit ahead of yourself? A mentor or a coach or a family member?
No, I wish I did.
Did you? Do you?
Yeah.
Because sometimes you did get ahead of yourself.
Oh, absolutely. I think there was a point.
Why didn't you reach out to someone? You thought,
obsessed.
Well, yeah.
Just couldn't see anything else.
Wow.
Just thought this was what life was supposed to be, writing epic music and touring and playing epic gigs and stuff like that, I
reckon everyone in the public, in the spotlight, needs just need someone to keep them on track. And it's like, I use the analogy of I love AFL, and I look at these young blokes who get drafted, first year draft. Often they're still in year 12 at school. And the next thing they know, they get $100,000 starting, and, they can walk into any nightclub and get a drink card, and, the world's their oyster. And if you're not used to that, and who is, then, things can fall to shit pretty quickly.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, how do you learn? How do you learn, right? From your mistakes? Should we say that?
Absolutely.
And that's maybe what they're going to learn from at some point.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. It's a funny one.
Well, yeah. I mean, making mistakes is a good way of learning. You know, if you make it twice, you're a dickhead. But if you make it once and make a change, then you're a genius.
But there's that's a great thing because, sorry to go off on another direction, but you think about when rugby union was amateur and rugby league players used to have a job and then they'd just play footy, they were a bit more down to earth.
Yeah,
weren't they?
100%.
They had their shit together a bit more.
Yep.
So, yeah, the value of whatever that job was.
We talked earlier, Cogsy, about the ideas and music and writing music, and the whole process of ideation. I find it a difficult question to even ask a creative person because often they don't know. And I grew up in an advertising agency amongst copywriters and art directors and graphic designers, and they were always so hesitant to talk about where the idea came from because often they didn't know or it was personal or whatever it may be. Did you personally? Because you wrote.
I used to write some lyrics and stuff like that. I always had something to do with the writing process and sitting down. And
what's your creative? Can you describe your creative process, or is it not that kind of structured or specific?
Well, in the band, it was very much. I was like a what's the word? An instigator and make things work, make the band room work.
Yeah.
There's an idea. Let's try this idea. Let's change it to this sort of thing. It's different now. So I left uni. I left the band. I went to uni and I did a journalism degree, and I sort of learnt about writing. I learned how to spell and write sentences, and now I'm screenwriting now, and I'm starting to realise how the creative process from before works now. As far as like my idea of creative process is just do it. Mm-hmm. If you need to come up with something, you just start. And you write, if you need to come up with a paragraph, you just write it. Yep. And then you edit the shit out of it, right? And it gets better and better every time.
Well, you got something to work with.
Yeah. So I don't think anyone just comes up with stuff.
No.
Like geniuses don't just, they don't, I don't even know if they exist.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. And often many of the geniuses that we think are geniuses, the whole process is incredibly painful for them. Yeah. But that's the pain of creativity, isn't it? I suppose if it's not painful, then I don't know, there's a weird enjoyment to that creative angst.
Yes.
Unless who was the artist who chopped his ear off? That wouldn't be, it was Vincent Van Gogh.
Yeah, so it is painful, and then I think when you achieve something, it's such a great come down.
Yeah.
Oh, I did it. I did it.
That must feel
that
incredible.
Was me. I can't believe it.
Creativity is so important, and again, looking at small business owners, not enough of them spend enough time just being creative and just have an idea and explore the idea, write the idea out, draw it up, talk to others about it, just try to bring it to life somehow as opposed to going, oh, geez, I can't do that. It's too hard.
So, but what about you sort of have to open yourself up for criticism, right?
Yes.
Because a creative idea, because it's so personal, it's easy for us to think it's great. Mm-hmm. And you come up with something and you want to hold on to that because you just got that feeling, that buzz, whatever that endorphin rush was from creating something. And so that's often people mistake that endorphin rush as this must be great.
Yes.
Yeah, it might be great for 2 days, but you may as well show people and see if you can work with them, maybe you can improve it.
And a lot of creative people don't like doing that because they're not ready for the criticism.
Yeah.
But if you don't, then how would you ever know? And I suppose you just got to have a bit of a thick skin because, as a band, you would have got some scathing reviews, probably coming
just
off the back of
it.
Yeah. And I hear a lot of people in the public eye that just don't, particularly in the day. You fortunately grew up not pre-social media, but social media was nothing like it is now. Geez, you just wouldn't read it, you know?
Yeah.
people on Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn just having a real crack at you. And
But so there must be this creative thing. There must be a balance between working with people and taking in constructive feedback and then believing in yourself.
that's right. At some point, you got to go, thank you. That sounds right. But now I'm just going to make my own decision and see where that goes.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a bloody tough one. Marketing-wise, from what I understand, record companies, the more successful you are, the more hits you have, the record company finds resources to put behind you to get the name out there further.
Yep.
Really, is that it? Is there anything more that you could do to encourage your record company to get the Powderfinger name out there, or was it completely reliant on, boys, just write another hit?
I think we underestimated what the record company did for us, really, because we didn't see it happening. They put a lot of effort into what was happening, and I don't understand that side of the business really, of how they would have influenced different sort of things. So I don't want to say they did nothing, because I don't know as much as what they did.
Isn't that interesting?
But I know that they were always really supportive, and they were always out there trying to sell our stuff, which was pretty epic, you know.
Yeah.
And there wasn't that direct connection with the public back then through social media and that sort of stuff. We were often left up to our own devices to come up with marketing ideas.
Oh, yeah.
Because, I don't know, I suppose in the end, we'd been in the business longer than most of them.
You knew the band. You knew the brand.
Yeah.
You think of a great marketing idea that you came up with? It was like, that was...
I don't know if it was a great idea, but at the time we thought it was a good idea. It was sort of when social media was just starting to boom a bit, you know, Twitter and Facebook. So this is 2009 or so, and we released our very last album, and we decided we were going to play 3 cities in one day. So we started in Brisbane in the morning, and we didn't tell anybody where we were playing. We just put it on Twitter or social media the night before.
Awesome.
So it was about getting
excitement,
hits or whatever. And then when we left Brisbane, we said, now we're playing in Sydney at this place. And then when we left Sydney, we said, now we're playing in Melbourne at this place. Be there.
Brilliant.
And so, we played to, I don't know, probably 1,000 people in each city.
Yeah.
All squashed into these places. And that was all about getting a vibe happening, sort of thing. And it was sort of fun at the same time.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah. I know the Stones did that once at the Bridge Hotel in Richmond. All of a sudden they put something out on Twitter, and the next you imagine the crowd down the Bridge Road.
Yeah.
My goodness me.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was well, you use social media pretty well. You've got back together for one night only during COVID. That YouTube video was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah,
I mean, you're all coming in separate rooms. I think Ian was on the stage at the Tivoli.
That was JC, yeah.
I was a JC.
Yeah, he was at his venue. What's it called? The Triffid.
I was the Triffid.
Yeah.
And you were, I don't know.
I was just in Coolum here.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it was fun.
5 tracks, keeping us all company over COVID, raising money for Support Act.
Support Act, yep.
And Beyond Blue.
Yep.
Good thing to do.
Yep.
Income streams, and I don't expect, you might not know this, because again, it's quite interesting, you know, like you do have a record company, you do have, I guess the manager sits between you and the record company, but they're taking a big lick of what you're making. So, you know, you choose, I suppose you didn't even choose not to understand it. It's just not in your wheelhouse, and it's not something you want to focus on the product and the music and the entertainment. But anyway, if we can work through income streams, because there are a lot. I mean, back in the day, recording for you would be number one in terms of putting out.
Make money from selling records.
You've sold 2.2 million, which is pretty amazing. How does that make you feel?
Oh, I don't know. It just seems normal.
Arrogant drummer.
I know, it's terrible, isn't it? But it happened over like 25 years.
Of course,
so,
and it continues to happen at a slower rate.
Sometimes
these days.
I think I was Smashing Pumpkins. They've sold 30 million.
It's unreal.
Oh man!
I was listening to that great song by the Goo Goo Dolls, "Slide." And it's maybe you do.
I can't remember. I would know it if
you heard it.
Yeah.
It's just one of those songs. It's a great song. I think it might have gone to certainly top 10 Billboard. But there's probably a second tier band, the Goo Goo Dolls.
Yeah.
It's had 1.1 billion listens on Spotify. One song, which I'm told equates. A quick Google search says it equates to about $3 million.
Holy cow!
Yeah,
that's amazing.
But,
isn't it?
So recording wise, go on.
So we would make money through album sales.
Yes.
And radio play, TV play, that's royalties.
Can you just explain how that works?
No.
No. I think anyone knows.
No.
You know?
I think what happens is a radio station will have to pay APRA a certain amount of money each year.
Yes.
And
They pay a license and that covers whatever they play.
yeah, and that money is split between how many plays you get basically over that sort of thing. And I think a lot of places have to pay that license really, depending on where it is. A live festival will have to pay a license for songs that those bands are playing, and you'll get money through that. On TV, like a TV station network will have to pay a license as well, and you'll get a cut from that if your song has been played or something. Same with if you license a song to a company for an ad or something like that.
Do you ever do that?
Yeah, we've done that a few times.
Have you?
We came up through this generation where you'd sort of avoid that sort of stuff because Midnight Oil always never did it. So we never did it, and now everyone does it. So we sort of
was that a
opened
hard
up.
decision? Because I imagine that is the ultimate. Fans could regard that as the ultimate sellout. Oh, Powderfinger has sold a song to Holden.
Yeah.
Good on them.
Yeah, well, these days people look at that as a good on them, right?
Yeah.
Back in the day, it was a bad thing. Eddie Vedder wouldn't be happy with it.
No, purist.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've done it a few times. Yeah,
Corporate gigs,
never done a corporate gig.
rich folks parties.
Never done that.
Really?
Trying to think.
Do you want to play here on Saturday night? Hey, little pool deck there.
Yeah, sure. Drum solo.
What could go wrong?
No, we did play Fred and Mary's. They had a wedding, Denmark.
The
Danish couple.
Yeah, Princess Mary from Tassie.
So it was a big gig at a massive venue.
How'd that come about?
She just asked us to play.
Oh, she's an Aussie.
Likes the band. Said, "Do you want to come and play?" So we said, "Yeah, we'll come, but you got to pay for business class seats." Right?
Oh,
so this is how wanky we are.
Yeah. That's not
make
wanky,
it
that's reasonable.
good for us. Yeah, it's reasonable until we got there and we realised it was a charity gig.
Oh, wow. where are you going? To Denmark?
Denmark.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so it's like, we just, whatever,
but you're
that
not-
would have
you're not
gone to the charity.
Oh, well, you're not a charity.
No, but, we always flew economy anyway. So it was one of those, we just went, they've invited us. They're a royal family. Let's go comfortably.
I would have opted for first class.
Yeah, I know.
Knowing they'd say no, and I'll take business.
Yeah. Anyway.
So no corporate gigs. Advertising you did. Movie soundtracks. So you had My Kind of Scene in Mission Impossible 2.
Yeah, we've had a few
You had-
movie soundtracks, yeah.
Are they lucrative? I wouldn't have.
You can work out a deal that will make them lucrative, but if it's an indie film and they're like need a help, you give it to them for a minimal price sort of thing.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And streaming, which again, that wasn't sort of happening for you back then. Is that a revenue stream that is now pretty
Probably
good for you?
Not much. Merchandising's good for us still.
Yeah, the old merch. I've been to your website. There's some good stuff there, actually. who manages that these days?
Well, that's our manager, Paul, and his co-manager, Rachel. They come up with good ideas every year or so and run them past us, and we sort of tick them off and go, yeah, that's great, keep it going.
Geez, I wish I'd kept both Sarah, my girlfriend, and myself, grew up loving music, continue to do, but we've thrown out our band T-shirts from years gone by.
Right,
all our kids just hate us but imagine if you'd had, the Dire Straits and the REM and the Pearl Jam and from, 1982, 1985, it'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
So merch is still a big thing, yeah. Everyone wants a bit of the band there.
Yeah. So I think live is the big thing, like playing gigs.
Now.
Yeah.
Well, even back then, I suppose.
Even back then, yeah. Because we did some big tours and stuff like that. And so that would always pay off pretty well. Mm-hmm. So that's
and again, for the finger, was that splitting it equally?
Yep.
Good setup.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was really good. Really good. So
has it this is a rude question, you don't have to answer it, but has it set you up now? Is it taken the pressure off for you to then do what you love, which is journalism, which I want to touch on at the end? But
mate, I grew up in Nambour. My parents are teachers.
Little country town in Queensland.
My parents are teachers. My brother's a doctor and my sister's a nurse. And I left uni thinking I was going to be a phys ed teacher. And I think I bought a house when I was about 30. And I just thought, wow, I've made it. that's as good as it's going to get. So I'm not going to say, I don't do too well. Man, I think I've done really well. I'm pumped, you know. So I'm probably not as wealthy as what people want to be these days.
Yes.
But I'm pretty happy, you know, as far as money's concerned. Creatively, I'm always trying to reach something.
How do you satisfy your creativity these days?
Well, I'm trying to make films. I'm screenwriting and
writing screenplays.
Yeah, and I want to make films here. I'm running a festival here that's about making films.
Oh, awesome!
Getting people to submit short film scripts.
Yeah,
and then I've got a team of people I'm working with and we develop those scripts and we shoot them and deliver them.
Yeah,
working with a mate from Nambour who's a reality show producer, and he gets reality show ideas and turns them into real things.
Yeah.
And we've just had 2 of them optioned by major production houses and stuff like that.
Fantastic.
So that's my creative outlet.
You've been freed up, thanks to the finger, to focus on not really, or maybe passion projects, but stuff that absolutely brings you 100% joy. You don't need to, do something just for the sake of doing it.
Yeah, but I've still got that thing like that. Like I know what being creative is now. It's making something out of nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And I love to make something that people go, wow, or that makes them feel good.
Mm-hmm.
So that's sort of my drive.
Competition, back in the day, did you ever, again, as a business, the business of the band, did you ever go, Silverchair are doing X, we better do Y? Or you've just run your own race, you don't look up and out?
Yeah, I think we sort of fell into that towards the end because we probably weren't producing really great music.
Mm-hmm.
So we started to look around and see what was happening. But I think that's a natural thing for a band. We probably reached the end of our creativity and what we could offer. So we're looking for more influences to do.
I think one of you guys said you've said everything you can through your music. So
pretty much we all, that was my idea anyway. I was
right
at that point. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm not saying that was my idea with the band, but I was off studying journalism and I wanted to do something else. So
you're done.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was there? I just remember that last concert at River Stage, man. The look on your bloke's eyes, except for Bernard's, it was heart-wrenching.
Really?
I think so.
Wow.
I think so.
I walked off that stage and it was the biggest weight off.
Really?
It was awesome.
Oh,
the best feeling I've had for 7 or 8 years.
Oh, that's so interesting. I completely 180 degrees the opposite. I just imagined you blokes going back into the band room, probably wanting to belt Bernard up. This is just me as a fan of the
Bernard
band.
was the same as all of us.
It's amazing. I just because what you read in the press was that Bernard just thought he could do it himself, and he's gone on to do.
It wasn't like that at all. It was,
That's nice to know.
It reached a natural ending, and we realised we were smart enough to realise.
Yeah,
and we just went, it's got to finish.
Yeah,
and as soon as we said we're finishing, we all started to get along really well.
Oh wow!
Because it was like, yeah, why not? Just enjoy the last few moments. But you see bands who just keep on going and think, man.
Yeah, I know. It's like give up. Well, you could say that about are you thinking about the Stones when you say that?
Stones are awesome.
Awesome. I don't know what they're like live now, but geez, good on him. He's 79 and running around the stage.
Still crazy.
And then you've got to hand it to bands like REM who left on an absolute high. Their last album was extraordinary. And
absolutely.
Yet other bands who just, it's hard, it's hard to let go. If it defines you, it's pretty hard not, even for me, having done this podcast for 13 years.
Wow, that's epic.
It's a long time.
That's amazing. Well done.
Thank you. But, part of it defines me, and I don't say that egotistically, but it makes it harder to figure out what's next because it's like, well, what I do has been good to me.
Yeah.
I enjoy it. It's fed the family and it's what I do and I enjoy doing this kind of stuff.
Is this your main job?
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. Well, off the back of it, I get to keynote speak at conferences, MC conferences.
Got the live gigs?
Got the live.
This is the recordings.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I just need some merch.
Yes. Well, they do it for This American Life do it, don't
they?
They
do.
All those guys?
Yeah, there is actually some. Well, there's Bandcamp. There's a couple of T-shirt companies that target podcasters too, but I can't imagine anyone wanting to wear a T-shirt that says "Small Business, Big Marketing." You should start a podcast.
Too much work.
Too much. It's not as hard, not as much as you think. Righto. We've talked about most things. I could keep talking to you, Cogsy, because it's a great conversation. It's fascinating how, the creative person in a band, there are still a lot of learnings for the small business owner to sort of embrace and get on with. A big one for me is passion and loving what you do, because then the rest sort of falls into place. For you then, so talking about next steps, like being in one of Australia's biggest rock bands of the 90s and the noughties, and then it comes to an end, and not suggesting you are egotistical, but your ego is such that, hey, I'm a live performer, I'm a public figure, I've made some good coin from it, and then all of a sudden that finishes. For some blokes and women, it'll be bloody hard. For some, they just hit a real low. For you, you've just gone and go, I'm going to study journalism. And the next thing you know, you're on ABC radio. Was that a hard process or?
No, because this is going to sound funny. The problem with fame and being a popular musician is you often don't evolve because you don't have to. You're living in this world of yes men and yes women, and anything you do, yeah, great, that's great. And so you tend to not grow too much. I don't think you need to sort of test yourself. So I think it was about 2002 or so, I started to just look for other stuff. And I'd also had a relationship breakdown, which completely changed my outlook on stuff. And I started going on surf trips in Indonesia a lot because the surf's awesome over there. And I became fascinated with what the world was around there, and I came home I think it was in 2005, and I signed up to study a course at Griffith University, Introduction to Asia.
So you're still in Powderfinger at this stage?
Still in Powderfinger. And I'm thinking, I'm walking into this lecture with all these, teenagers or whatever, just out of school, and I'm thinking, I know the world. I've done all right. I'm the man,
Yeah.
What are they going to teach me? I don't know why I'm doing this, but I'm sort of interested. And I think it took me about 2 hours to realise I don't know shit. I know this small little world I was living in.
How humbling.
I was a big fish in a little pond or whatever it was, and there's a whole world out there.
Yeah.
And my brain just went, you need to learn shit. And that sort of became my new obsession, was feeding the brain.
Yeah.
And I hadn't done that in Powderfinger.
Uh-huh.
So it was really easy for me.
Yeah, it must be a total fish when you're in a band of that size, like you say, a total fish pond, and a fish bowl, and it must be horrendous being surrounded by yes people.
Well,
because
I didn't know it. You don't know it at the time, right?
Didn't you? Too young.
No, you just don't know, because you think there's this great story about some really big Brisbane rock god. It's not someone in our band, and he's always really worried about how he looks. It was told to me by one of his backup singers, and she said she went walking with him one day, and he was wearing this jumper, and he just wasn't comfortable in it, and he kept on saying, how do I look? And she said, you look great, you look fine. And it's too itchy, and he took it off, and she said, that's better, you look heaps better. And he goes, how could you say that to me? I don't like how people saying I look bad. And it was like, that's it.
Yeah.
That's it, right?
Yeah.
Any little criticism,
Yeah. Well, that's back to my question earlier. Did you have someone around you personally that told you to, pull your head in? And obviously at that time you don't know, but on reflection, it would have been a bloody good idea.
Do you think anyone tells Elon Musk to pull his head in?
I don't know. I sort of a leading question. You're expecting me to say no. There's no way that he'd have.
I don't know. It's an interesting question, isn't it? He's the guy who's signing your check. He is employing you. He's the wealthiest man in the world, and he's surrounded by these people whose lives are sort of dependent on him, liking him. Mm-hmm. Does anyone say, you're being a dickhead, mate?
About 2 or 3 years ago on this podcast, I interviewed Jeff Bezos' shadow.
Right.
Okay, so this is a fellow who was Jeff's right-hand man. He just left, and he'd written a book called Working Backwards, which is what I interviewed him about. It was the Amazon process of coming up with ideas. He was very much not a yes man. He was a bloke. And I think, so back to your Elon Musk, because Elon and Jeff are probably on similar bank balances. I think those blokes, my read on it would be they are so smart and switched on that they are aware of the yes man, disease, and they're going to avoid it at all costs.
No.
And they are going to employ
I don't believe that.
Really?
Yeah, because I think the yes man is like a drug.
Oh, it's nice to hear yes.
Yeah, it's like, and when you hear no, it's like, ugh. And the more you hear yes, the harder no is.
That makes me cringe. If I was surrounded by people that, if I couldn't, because I personally like constructive criticism. I don't like criticism, but if I can say, I can see that's coming from a good intent, that's coming from love, that's coming from a place where you want me to be a better person, then that's a really cool thing, a great thing to have around you. Whereas, I don't know, really, Musk and Bezos and these types, surely they can see beyond that.
Maybe they can. That's why they're good
I've
businessmen.
watched videos of Bezos. In fact, I only recently watched a video of Bezos at a cocktail party where David Blaine, or that magician guy, was doing some magician. So the magician, David's doing tricks in front of Bezos, and Bezos is surrounded by other people at the cocktail party, but they're all looking at Bezos, waiting for him to laugh or waiting for him to say something. It's like, what a shit way to live, hey? If it's not funny, don't laugh,
Yeah. Anyway, it's an interesting thing to think about.
It raises the whole question around, as business owners having a coach or a mentor or a family member or some objective third party that can kind of tell you to pull your head in.
It's funny. They're your best mates.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, sometimes.
You know what I mean. Like, you probably know that person, maybe.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, buddy, awesome chat.
Oh, thank you.
Absolutely awesome chat.
For having me.
Thank you for all the music you've brought to this world and for, going back in time and sharing it. I thought it might have been difficult, but, mate, it's still top of mind for you. I love it. Are they getting back together, the finger?
Not that I know of.
Righto. Let us know, will you?
Yeah, I will.
They can play here. We've got the whole national park there. They can just set up a little stage. In fact, we've got a deck down there. They can set up a stage on. Yeah. That's awesome. And good luck with your business. Is it what's the business called? Is there anything?
No, it's not a business at the moment. The festival we're running is called the Sunny Coast Showdown.
Okay. So, when is it?
We're launching it in 2 weeks.
Great.
The second version of it.
So this is the small short film festival.
Yeah, but it's actually a short film incubator and a festival.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
All right, bud.
Cool. Thanks
Cogsy,
for having us.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having you. See you, man.
Well, there you go, team. My work here is done. One of Australia's leading and most influential drummers, Powderfinger's Jono Coghill, or Cogsy, as I like to call him. I actually had to pinch myself to think I've interviewed one of my rock and roll heroes in my living room. I hope I didn't come across as too much of a fanboy, but if I did, sorry, not sorry. And you'll find a photo of us together, if that's of interest, in the show notes over at smallbusinessbigmarketing.com/612. Hey, what was your big takeaway from that chat? Let me know. Call the Small Business Big Marketing hotline on 0480 015 150. Put that in your phone. You can call me anytime. And be sure to leave your business name and website for some gratuitous self-promotion, just like long-time listener and motivated business owner Alex Jeffries did.
G'day, Tim. My name's Alex Jeffries, and I'm owner of Clutch for Humankind, the home of the art-inspired clutch purse designed to boost your mood. Yes, you heard it here first. All of our clutch purses are ethically made, and just as importantly, I donate 10% of the profit from every clutch to somebody who needs it more. And I've been listening to your show for about a year, and almost every episode has multiple gems that inspire me. I always save the ones I love to listen to again and again. And I'm just feeling so pumped today after listening to episode 596 with John Murphy, the guy who's selling the e-bikes to hunters. Hearing his SEO tips was a light bulb moment for me. I knew that I should have a blog, but I realized that I needed to niche it down more and get really clear on how I'm designing it, how I'm aligning it with my core messaging. And I also loved his skyscraper analogy. I was driving when he talked about writing a list of 100, and by the time I got to my destination, I was just bursting to get out my pen and paper and start writing down the names of all of the artists who are an inspiration for my designs on my clutch purses, the artists that I'd love to interview, collaborate with. And, you know, if that just wasn't enough, just before your podcast finished, you actually replayed a phone call from the owner of Cogsy, and you recommended that he listen to episode 554, which was the interview of a naming expert. That's absolutely going to be my next track, because I often have people misspell my company name, and other people who ask me what the company name means, Clutch for Humankind. So potentially some tips for me there, and some considerations maybe on a name change. So thanks again for all of the gold that you give. My goal is to sell enough clutch purses that I make a material difference to the lives of others through my donating. So I'd love it if you were to visit Clutch for Humankind, www.clutch, C-L-U-T-C-H, the number 4, humankind.com.au, home of the mood-boosting, art-inspired clutch purse made with a conscience. Thanks, guys. See you soon. Bye.
Alex, thank you so much for making the time, for leaving such a wonderful message. I love it when one of my precious listeners goes over in detail what they've picked up and implemented from this podcast. It's a very big part of why I do what I do. So well done to you, Alex, for actually listening and taking action. Everyone else, you'll find the links in the show notes over at smallbusinessbigmarketing.com/612 to the 2 episodes Alex mentions, the one on finding a way to the top of Google without paying any money for it, you know, like no Google AdWords or anything like that, along with the naming episode, which was also pretty important. Hey, Alex, I've checked your website out. I love your product. So does my beautiful girlfriend, Sarah. Those clutches are absolutely magnificent. Well done to you. Everyone else, be like Alex and call me on 0480 015 150. Share your best marketing tip with us. We'd all love to hear it. 0480 015 150. Hey, if you are wondering whether appearing on other people's podcasts is a good idea, I can assure you it is. I got this wonderful email from past guest Janine Liston, aka the pricing lady, this week. She says, "Hi Timbo, I've been meaning to write to you recently. I wanted to let you know that the response to me being on your podcast has been amazing. Truly, I've not been on a show like this before where there was such a huge response. This tells me you're doing something different to support those who come on your show. I've been invited to be on several other podcasts as a result. I've also gotten messages from several of your listeners about what they've learned or that they appreciated our conversation. I've even developed a following of my own podcast specifically from Australia. At first we were puzzled and then it clicked where it had come from. I've shared this episode and will do it again, and it seems to really resonate with people. Thanks once again. All the best, Janine." And she very kindly offers or asks what she can do for me. So I guess my message there is, as a way of getting your precious business name, your personal brand awareness around what you do out there, tap on the shoulder of podcasters. We are always looking for content. You know, we've got minutes to fill, and there'd be nothing more personally for me. If you've got a great business that's using marketing really effectively, then I'd love to hear from you. Tim@timreid, reid.com.au. Don't be shy. Got some super duper guests coming your way in the coming weeks. We'll hear from one of Australia's leading e-commerce specialists who's just written E-Commerce for Dummies. I love that series of books. Sort of seems rude, but also very appropriate. We'll catch up with a world surfing champion. He was number 1 in the world back in the day, who's now on a mission to help people find their purpose in life. And we'll also catch up with one of my marketing heroes. In fact, he's responsible for helping me identify the whole concept of helpful marketing, around which I've written a book about. Hey, if you've enjoyed today's episode, be sure to hit the subscribe button on your favorite podcast app, where you'll find 611 more chats with successful business founders. Not rock stars, unfortunately, but I'm going to find more rock stars because I love talking to them, just between you and I. This show was stitched together by editor extraordinaire Alex Amster. And speaking of rock stars, The Music Bed was written, sung and produced by our very own Lockie Doley, who, guess what, played in Powderfinger for a period of time. Small world. To you, thank you so much for tuning in. May your marketing be the absolute best marketing. Bye for now.